Welcome back to The World Today here on France 24. I'm Stuart Norval. In this half hour of the programme, the US President Donald Trump heralding his first 100 days as the most successful first 100 days ever. He hit out at critics, touted as well his own record. As he told his supporters, more is to come. We're going to analyse the speech for you in perspective with my guest. And we'll hear as well from our correspondent who's been to one of the US universities that feels under attack from Trump. That's UCLA in Los Angeles. All that coming up for you in the next 15 minutes or so. So it's been then the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country. So anyway, says the US President Donald Trump as he's marked his first 100 days in power by telling his supporters that even after the whirlwind in US politics since he took power, he's just getting started. He called Joe Biden sleepy. He said the media is fake. He called judges who oppose him communists, the Democrats radical left, and he said friendly countries have abused us more so than foe on trade. Little detail, though, of what actually he intends to do next, although he did say he still thinks Vladimir Putin wants peace.
We're here tonight in the heartland of our nation to celebrate the most successful first 100 days of any administration in the history of our country, and that's according to many, many people. This is the best, they say, 100-day start of any president in history, and everyone is saying it. We've just gotten started. You haven't even seen anything yet. It's all just kicking in. And week by week, we're ending illegal immigration. We're taking back our jobs and protecting our great American auto workers and all of our workers, frankly. We're protecting all of our workers.
Donald Trump there. Well, whatever you think of him, it's certain that he has upended the world order several times and stood up for his America First policy. With what has changed, you might have thought he'd been president for many months, but in fact today marking that relatively short 100 days since his inauguration. Well, with me here on set is Jeremy Ghez. He's Professor of International Affairs and Economics Expert in US Politics at HEC Paris. HEC is Paris's School of Advanced Business Studies. Thanks very much for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you for having me.
I mean, it's certainly been a roller coaster, hasn't it? I mean, I know that you're involved in Tsunami Coming, which is, you were just telling me, a newsletter. What do you think it's been like the first 100 days?
I mean, it's very striking that we knew he would come in swinging, and he did swing. He has this very, very specific view of the world that is disrupting, I think, decades of U.S. foreign policy, one that is far more transactional. How Americans used to believe that, what's good for the rest of the world is good for America. All of this is being upended. And I think that basically he's trying to promote probably what is most valuable to him. That's his brand name. Beyond politics, he wants to stand for all of these people that voted for him, somewhere between 25 and 33% of the U.S. electorate that basically voted for him in the name of the defense of middle classes, in the name of defense of America.
So all those things that you wrote about and talked about before he came to power, I mean, were you actually able to predict exactly what he might do? Could you go that far?
I don't know if we could predict it, because there was always this sense among Republicans, that Donald Trump was a serious political figure that you could vote for, but don't take everything he says seriously. And what you see today in Wall Street, for instance, among American CEOs, is a form of perplexity, wondering, is this going to last longer than we thought? So I think that he probably went a little bit further than what many people expected. But again, I think the logic here is not necessarily the traditional historical political logic that his predecessors have followed. I think he really has this brand name idea in his mind that is incredibly important to him.
Well, let's talk about some of the individual issues. Ukraine, to start with. I mean, critics have accused him, of course, of being far too pro-Russian. That very, very awkward press conference with Vladimir Zelensky at the White House. Some kind of words for Zelensky more recently, particularly after the Pope's funeral. Yeah,
it's at the risk of being counterintuitive, I think that there's room still hope for Ukraine in this because, like him or hate him, he has a talent for reality TV, for making good pictures and for telling good stories. And that sequence that we observed in the Vatican, when they sat, he probably knew, even if he didn't instigate it, he probably knew the effects this would have. And I think this translates a lot more hesitations in his head that headlines suggest, meaning that he probably doesn't want Ukraine to fall, but he doesn't want to do anything about it too either. So I think there's a sense that, Europeans probably have a broader hand to play than what headlines actually suggest and what his extravagant and outrageous claims sometimes suggest.
I mean, that's very difficult, though, isn't it, for countries like Ukraine? Their future depends on this. And is it all just a PR stunt that's actually driving it, if you see what I mean?
It's certainly a PR stunt, even in that Oval Office meeting that you mentioned earlier. He did say it's good TV. That's how he concluded the whole conversation. I think that for Ukraine, it's really a matter of trying to find the right ties and the right set of alliances. What's crystal clear, and this is not Donald Trump, this is the American establishment, wants this war to end. Even under Biden, Richard Haass, who was the former head of the Council on Foreign Relations, who went to negotiate with with Moscow in the name of Washington, really kind of provided a roadmap for this war to end. I think what really matters now is Ukraine going to be this demilitarized and neutralized country in the middle of Europe, or is it going to be a future West Germany? It's not getting Crimea back tomorrow morning. It's not getting the eastern flank of the country back. Can Europeans basically use their own history, invest in this flawed democracy to basically transform it into Western Germany? That's not Washington that's going to do that. It's probably more European countries. And as you say, delicate balance to manage when you're in Kyiv.
The other big international story, I suppose, is trade tariffs, the relationship with Europe, with China as well. I mean, that's incredibly difficult. It's been completely upended, hasn't it?
Yeah. And again, what's good for the rest of the world is good for America? Well, no more. We used to think of trade as a win-win situation. Now, Donald Trump thinks of this as a zero-sum game. What you win, I lose. What I win, you lose. And this completely upends the way we've been thinking about multilateral frameworks, common standard, common norms for world trade in the almost defunct World Trade Organization. He has this love for bilateral agreements. This is why it's incredibly hard for him to think about, the European Union as a trading bloc. The real question for Europeans, again, is can they reinvent multilateralism? Can they resist the pressure? We see Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni being incredibly attracted by a bilateral deal to try to protect Italy's interest. I think those divisions would likely be incredibly fateful for Europe.
He's been a little bit quieter on some international issues, hasn't he? I'm thinking here notably of Gaza. I mean, he has met with Benjamin Netanyahu, but generally the tone and the temperament has been a little bit quieter. Yeah,
it has. And I also wonder, does he think, perhaps legitimately, that, one of his biggest successes of the first term was the Abraham Accords? There is a better, more optimistic picture for the Middle East, again, than what this horrible war suggests and horrible conflict since the attacks of October 7th suggest. There is one in which, goes through the streets of Riyadh, where there is further agreements along the Abraham Accord parts. There's no serious observer that doesn't believe in a Palestinian state, but there's no serious observer that doesn't believe in the importance of the security of the state of Israel. And I think recognition from Arab states in exchange for a Palestinian state kind of seems light years away, but these are the things that may happen quicker than you might expect. And I suspect that this might actually be hidden in Donald Trump's mind. May I say, he's not a pacifist, but he does want to win the Nobel Peace Prize for very egocentric reasons. But that in itself might actually be an opportunity for the rest of the world to seize.
Well, let's look a little bit now at domestic politics as well. We're going to talk more with our guest in just a moment. But since returning to the White House, Donald Trump, of course, has launched an unprecedented attack on US higher education. In 100 days, over 50 universities have been investigated for their diversity, equity and inclusion policies. Billions in federal funding, including at Harvard and the University of Pennsylvania, have been suspended. Many researchers arguing that the measures aimed at silencing institutions working on sensitive topics such as climate change, public health and minority rights. Well, our correspondent Wassim Cornet has been to UCLA in Los Angeles.
At UCLA, one of America's top public research universities, the stakes are high. Many scientists and researchers here say they're being deliberately targeted, not just with budget cuts, but because of some of the issues they're working on, like climate change, which clash directly with the Trump administration's agenda.
We began this study in the summer of 2024, and we're full steam ahead in February and received, out of the blue without warning, a letter saying that the project needed to cease immediately. The title of the project had the word equity in it. I'm guessing perhaps that it was that word that triggered the request to stop the project. I don't know it for sure.
So there is absolute climate of both fear and of incredible uncertainty about what the next 6 months, year, 3 years are going to hold for higher education.
It is concerning. It is a little gloomy. It doesn't paint it in like the greatest hope, especially now that the competition is getting more fierce internationally. Having these impacts affect not only the first 4 years, but possibly much more. It puts us in a precarious situation.
A proposed cap on indirect funding could cost UCLA nearly $200 million, a blow that many fear could cripple public funding. The threat of cuts is also affecting campuses all across the country, leading this week's edition of Nature magazine to ask this daunting question: will U.S. science survive Trump 2.0?
Wassim Cornet there at UCLA, where Jeremy Ghez is still with us. You're a university man yourself, obviously. It's very worrying, isn't it, for people in the US, but not just the US, even people throughout the world who may have deals and relationships with US universities.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly disturbing. And indeed, to put my academic hat on, historically, we know that societies and Western democracies have prospered thanks to academic freedom, thanks to scientific advancement. And this is not a way for political movements to interfere, without a doubt. Again, I also hope for counter powers to take place. Remember what happened when Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Accords initially. You know, the whole private sector said, but wait a second, this is actually giving China an edge in one of the most defining topics of our times. So I hope that there will be some form of balance that will be basically established between scientifics, between businesses that are going to have to be pragmatic in the way they approach this, facing a lot of political hurdles that I can certainly understand, but try to basically do this in the name of common sense. This Trump revolution has been done in the name of common sense. Maybe that's the overlapping common denominator, so to speak, yeah.
What next for Donald Trump then? I mean, if you believe the economists, of course, the US economy is heading for some big bumps. His poll ratings are down quite considerably. He's got, 18 months, I suppose, until the midterm elections come up. It's not very long, is it, for him to sort of get more of a grip on things, I suppose? Yeah,
and I guess there are two doors. There's door A, that you perfectly summarized, that basically captures, I think, the dilemma of a wide range of U.S. presidents in the past facing, that sword of the midterm elections. I think and wonder about the fact that maybe he may be looking at this in a different way, because Donald Trump worries more about his brand name than elections. He got reelected, and I think that's his political revenge. Polls are down, but somewhere between 40 and 44%, that's still a pretty good performance when you think that MAGA electors represent somewhere between 25 and 33% of the electorate. There's still a significant chunk beyond that MAGA hardcore base that actually supports him. And I also think about this in terms of brand name. As long as he thinks he's able to preserve his brand name, I'm not entirely sure midterm elections are as worrying as it might have been for previous presidents.
And presumably part of the fault of that it lies at the feet of the Democrats. A lot of criticism of them for really not taking advantage of the situations as they come up.
And political opposition seems completely muted. It seems the only political opposition is really coming from stock markets and bond markets in the United States. Look, I mean, they may have 18 months to get their act together too. I think this party is trying to wonder, what lessons to draw from, the failures of 2016 and the failures of 2024. I think 2020 was almost an election all by itself, a different logic. And I think it's incredibly hard for them to try to figure out. They're still a very divided party, perhaps as divided as the Republicans are, perhaps more so because they don't have any natural leader. That process through which they find a natural leader is going to be decisive in their ability to make that opposition strong against Donald Trump.
Okay, well, the last 3 months have certainly been a roller coaster. We shall see what the rest of of the term still has in store for all of us, I suppose. Thanks very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
To us. Jeremy Ghez, Professor of International Affairs and Economics, expert in US politics as well at HEC here in Paris. Thanks once again.
Thank you.